Hello and welcome to The Deep Dive.
Hi there. Good to be diving in.
So we're tackling something today that I think resonates with a lot of people learning English, even some native speakers, actually.
Oh, yeah. What have we got?
It's that feeling. Why is it sometimes just so incredibly difficult to understand English movies without using subtitles?
Ah, yes. The familiar subtitle struggle. It's real.
It really is. You might be perfectly fine reading a book in English, or you follow along in a lesson, maybe even handle conversations pretty well.
But then you sit down for a movie night, maybe pop on Netflix.
And suddenly, wham! It's like hitting this wall of sound, just fast-talking chaos almost,
And you find yourself reaching for that subtitle button pretty quick.
instantly. And the relief when you turn them on is just immediate. Everything clicks.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense then.
So the first thing to say is, if this is you, you are definitely not alone. And there's nothing wrong with your ears or, your brain.
Absolutely not. It's a very, very common experience.
Our mission today, then, is to really unpack why this happens, what's going on there, and then, importantly, what practical things can you actually do about it?
Sounds like a plan. Let's get into it.
Okay, so picture this scenario. You settle down. Maybe it's a big blockbuster like, I don't know, The Dark Knight or Inception, something intense.
Or even just a sitcom, like Friends, something conversational.
Right. You're ready, you're excited, but then maybe just a few minutes in, you realize, wait, I'm not really following this dialogue.
The words just seem to blur together.
Exactly. You catch a word here, maybe a phrase there, but the actual, witty back and forth, the jokes, the emotion,
It's just flying past you.
and then comes that moment. You hit the button, subtitles on.
And suddenly, clarity.
It makes you wonder, though, doesn't it? I know English. Why is this specific situation so different?
That's the key question, isn't it? And you absolutely do understand English. What this experience really highlights is that watching a film is, well, it's a whole different beast compared to a classroom or reading a text.
Okay, so it's not me, it's the movie. Well, sort of.
It's the nature of the medium and the language used within it. It's less about a personal failing and more about the specific challenges films present. It's systemic, really.
Right, so if it's not fundamentally our understanding, what's the biggest hurdle? I often think it's just the sheer speed.
Speed is definitely a major factor, yeah. Movie dialogue often moves much faster than, say, the carefully paced English you hear in a lesson.
It mimics real conversation, I guess, but sometimes even faster, like witty banter or arguments.
Exactly. And it's not just the speed itself, it's how that speed is achieved. In class, you get, let's call it clean English. Clear pronunciation, full sentences, proper grammar.
Very neat and tidy.
Right. But movie dialogue, it's messy. Actors drop words, they might mumble for realism, they use tons of contractions, think, gonna, wanna, let me...
Things you don't always see written down in textbooks.
Precisely. They're prioritizing conveying emotion, making it sound authentic, not necessarily perfect clarity for a language learner.
Can you give an example of how that sounds different?
Sure. Take a simple sentence. Do you want to go to the store? In clear speech, that's distinct.
Yep, nice and clear.
But in a fast movie exchange, it could easily sound like, do you want to go to the store? Or even shorter.
Wow, yeah, that's clipped.
It practically sounds like a different language when it's compressed like that. And, even native speakers don't catch every single syllable.
Really?
Yeah, we rely a lot on context, predicting what comes next, filling in the gaps based on the situation. That's a skill that takes time and exposure to build.
Okay, so speed and the way words get squashed together is huge, but then you layer on top of that accents and dialects.
Oh, absolutely. This adds a whole other level of complexity. English isn't monolithic, right?
Not at all. You've got standard British, American, Australian English, but then even within those.
Exactly. Think about the difference between, say, a Boston accent and a Texas drawl in the U.S., or maybe a Yorkshire accent versus a London one in the U.K.
They sound incredibly different, sometimes even hard for other native speakers to understand immediately.
Right. And each region, each dialect often comes with its own rhythm, its own cadence, maybe even unique slang or common phrases.
Like watching, say, Peaky Blinders. That Birmingham accent is pretty distinctive.
Very distinctive, and probably not something you've encountered much in a standard English course. So even if the grammar is perfectly fine, the sound of the words, the pronunciation can make it almost unrecognizable if you're not used to it.
And then there's slang on top of accents.
Slang is a big one. Words like, maybe lit or dope or sus or even something like ghosted.
Stuff you definitely don't learn in Chapter 3.
Right, and they often don't have a direct, literal meaning you can just look up easily. They're culturally loaded, they evolve quickly.
So without that specific cultural context, you're kind of lost.
Pretty much. It's like trying to get an inside joke when you're not in the group. It takes time and exposure to pick up on that stuff.
Okay, so we've got speed, we've got accents, dialects, slang. That's already a lot. But there's another piece, isn't there? Something about the actual sound environment of the movie.
Yes. This is often underestimated, I think. The sound design itself.
How so?
Well, think about where important conversations happen in real life. Usually we try to find somewhere relatively quiet.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah, move away from the noise if you need to really talk.
But in movies, characters are having crucial conversations in noisy nightclubs, on busy streets with traffic, during explosions or high-speed chases.
Right, amidst total chaos sometimes.
Exactly. And sound engineers are layering all these sounds meticulously: the dialogue, the background music score, sound effects like footsteps, gunshots, ambient noise.
To make it feel immersive, I guess.
Precisely. It pulls you into the world. But the side effect, especially for non-native listeners, is that the dialogue now has to compete with all that other sound.
So you're not just trying to understand the words.
You're trying to filter them out from, helicopters, car horns, background chatter, dramatic music swells. Your brain is doing a lot of auditory filtering.
That sounds exhausting, actually.
It can be. Which leads nicely into the next big reason, which is really about mental effort. It's cognitive load.
Cognitive load. Okay, what does that mean in this context?
It basically means your brain is juggling too many things at once. Watching a movie isn't passive, it's incredibly active, mentally.
What kind of things is the brain doing?
Well, think about it. You're simultaneously trying to understand the language being spoken, process all the visual information, who's talking, their expressions, the setting, the action, follow the plot, keep track of characters, interpret the tone and emotion.
Wow.
And sometimes, on top of all that, you might even be reading subtitles.
Right. Which is another task entirely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, for non-native speakers, just the basic act of understanding the spoken language often takes up more conscious brain power compared to a native speaker, for whom it's more automatic.
Because you're still maybe translating or working harder to decode the sounds.
Precisely. So when you add all those other tasks, visuals, plot, emotion, on top of the extra effort needed for language comprehension, your brain can hit its limit. It gets overloaded.
Cognitive overload.
Yep. And the consequence is you start missing things. Maybe a subtle plot point, a quick line of dialogue, the nuance in someone's voice. It's not about intelligence at all.
It's just about mental bandwidth.
Exactly. How much your brain can effectively process all at once, especially when a core part of it, the language, requires extra effort.
That makes a huge amount of sense. It paints a picture of why it's such a common challenge.
Yeah.
But okay, for everyone listening who's nodding along right now,
Yeah.
what can we do about it? Is it a hopeless situation?
Not at all. That's the good news. Improving movie comprehension is absolutely achievable. It takes time, it takes some strategy, and the right kind of practice, but you can get better.
Okay, let's hear some practical strategies then. Where should someone start?
Right. First off, use subtitles, but use them strategically. Don't just see them as a crutch you always need.
How do you mean strategically?
Think of them as training wheels. Maybe watch a scene, or even the whole movie, with English subtitles first. This helps you connect the sounds you're hearing to the words on the screen.
Ah, okay. Building that connection.
Exactly. Then try watching it again, maybe the next day, without the subtitles. You might be surprised how much more you pick up the second time around because your brain already has a framework.
I like that. Using them as a learning tool, not just a comprehension aid. What else?
Second tip, watch things you already know. Pick a movie or maybe a TV show episode that you've already seen, perhaps in your native language, and you know the plot really well.
Why does that help?
Because if your brain isn't spending energy trying to figure out what's happening in the story, it frees up more resources to focus purely on the language, the vocabulary, the pronunciation, the rhythm.
Makes sense. Less cognitive load again.
Exactly. Third, and this one is really active, use the pause and repeat method. Find a short segment of dialogue, maybe just 15-30 seconds. Listen to it carefully. Pause. Rewind. Listen again. Then try to actually say the lines yourself, mimicking the actor's pronunciation and intonation as best you can.
So is listening practice and speaking practice combined?
Precisely. It really helps solidify the sounds and rhythms in your mind and mouth. Fourth, Choose your material wisely, especially at first.
Meaning?
Don't jump straight into, say, a complex historical drama with thick regional accents or a fantasy movie packed with invented words and heavy slang.
Start simpler.
Yeah, maybe start with sitcoms, which often feature clearer, everyday conversation, or dramas known for more straightforward dialogue. Gradually work your way up to the more challenging stuff.
Good advice. Anything else?
Fifth, immerse yourself more broadly. Movie comprehension improves as your overall listening skills improve, so listen to English daily.
Through other things, like podcasts.
Yes, podcasts, audiobooks, YouTube videos on topics you find interesting. The more varied exposure your ears get to natural spoken English, the better they become at tuning into its nuances. Even 15-20 minutes a day helps.
Consistency is key.
Absolutely. And finally, number 6, don't just watch, actively study. Treat a short movie clip, maybe just 5 minutes, like a mini lesson.
How would you do that?
Pause frequently. Write down interesting phrases or slang you hear. Look them up. Try to understand why a character said something in a particular way. Break down the scene. Be an active language detective.
That sounds like more work, but probably very effective.
It is more effort, but it shifts you from passive watching to active learning, which really accelerates progress.
Okay, those are some really great actionable tips. So the main message then for anyone who's felt that frustration watching movies?
Is that it's completely normal. It's not a sign of failure or that you're bad at English.
It's just a reflection of how complex movies are, linguistically and auditorily.
Exactly. You're dealing with a high-level listening skill. Movies mashed together, culture, language, sound design, speed, accents. It's a unique challenge.
But one that can be overcome.
Definitely. With practice, with patience, and maybe using some of those strategies we talked about, it will get easier.
You'll find yourself catching more, understanding more.
Laughing at the jokes in real time, following the plot twists without needing the text, picking up on those little cultural details.
Without even thinking about the subtitles.
That's the goal. But perhaps think about this too. Beyond just understanding the dialogue, what deeper connections does mastering movie English unlock?
We mean?
Well, when you can understand not just the words, but the nuance, the slang, the cultural references embedded in how people speak in films.
You get more than just the plot.
Exactly. You start to grasp the authentic heart of the story, the culture it comes from, the characters' real personalities. It's a richer, deeper understanding, something to think about.
A great thought to end on. Thank you for breaking that all down.
My pleasure. It's a fascinating topic.